Hey, podcast listening people, welcome into another episode, another set of the B2B Mentors podcast. And of course, I have a phenomenal guest with me. I can't wait to share with you guys, a legend and author, and we'll dive into that. First off, do us this tiny favor. We're giving this to you for free, right? Free currency. You're getting insights from top real practitioners, B2B marketers, CMOs, executive leaders, and what I would call business celebrities, right? And so make sure you share this. It's on all your favorite podcast apps. So make sure you go leave a review. That helps others to find the show too. And again, real treat for you today. My new friend, Brian Will, who, I actually met you through my other very good friend, our mutual friend, Brandon T. Adams. And, great connector. And I want to kind of talk about that story a little bit because some things like even just our brief interaction was really, interesting. But Brian is the best-selling author of the Dropout Multimillionaire, Know the Psychology of Sales Negotiations. And you didn't list on there too, but I Give the Dumb Kids Hope, which I absolutely love because I was a dumb kid. And so I got to read that one as well. And then for my Spanish-speaking friends, multimillionario es sin pasar por la universidad, right? So even translated it to Spanish, which is awesome. Serial entrepreneur, 35 years of experience, created 7 highly successful companies across 4 industries worth over $500 million at their peak. And today, Brian is a visionary business leader owning restaurants in Atlanta, an insurance and technology company in Denver, my hometown, and a real estate business in Georgia and Florida. Brian, I'll shut up. If you want to say hi to everyone real quick.
What's up, Connor? How you doing, man? I appreciate you having me. It's going to be fun. Who knows when you're sitting in a restaurant having a drink with your friends and a guy walks up and here we are 2 weeks later, we're doing a podcast together. How cool is that?
Dude, it's the beauty of networking, connection, relationships. It's so funny because you guys had all done, there's about 5 or 6 of you done like a day-long event with Brandon, and we're all at the bar. Brandon's like, hey dude, come down, meet some of the folks. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm down there, we're hanging out, we're drinking, we're introducing each other. I turn over to you, I'm like, hey dude, I'm Connor, nice to meet you. What do you do? You're like, oh, I'm Brian, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, I'm an author. I've done this, consultant.
Actually, I let Brandon introduce me, didn't I? And he rattled off.
That's right. That's right. But part of it, I think part of it too, like you said it. And then Brandon gives me this look. He's like, no, dude, like Brian's a real deal. Like, dive in, and he starts giving your bio, sold companies for $80 million, owns multi-million dollars in restaurants, massive successful author. And it's just like, you're such a humble guy. Where do you get that humble vibe from? There's a lot of entrepreneurs that have accomplished the success you have, and they're very braggy, or they're like not in the picture at all. They're behind the scenes. No one even knows that they exist.
It's interesting. You've ever heard of the imposter syndrome, right? People are successful but feel like they're not. I was talking to another person, another podcast the other day, and I was telling him, it's weird. I'm a pilot also, and so a lot of times when I'm flying, I'll like be flying along and I'll look around and go, geez, I'm a pilot. That's crazy. And he goes, that's that little kid in your head from when you were a child that still doesn't believe that you are who you are. And I think that's part of it. I've never lost that voice inside my head that says, okay, I know you've done some cool things, but let's just check it back here just a bit here. Because remember, you're the kid who failed out of high school. So I think that's what it is.
So you still feel that way? Do you still get that imposter syndrome to this day?
I think everybody does. And if they don't, they're lying to you. I mean, I've met so many people on these podcasts as you have, and they've all got stories and backgrounds and things that have happened that we call them their past traumas. And that stuff doesn't leave, So there are moments of weakness in everybody. I don't care how successful they are.
Also, you got the eye contact filter going on in the show over there? Because it's horribly creepy when you turn around and it's still making eye contact.
All right, I won't turn.
Just keep your eyes wide open the entire time.
There you go.
Perfect. Perfection, my friend. It's like a piece of art. One other thing I was like, it's amazing how just even small interactions with people that are more successful than you, something can stick, right? And we're sitting there, we're talking, we're shooting the shit, and I'm like, I've read a couple of books recently. I really like them. I've read Stephen Schwartzman on starting BlackRock. I read Bob Iger's book, and you look at me like I have a third eyeball, and you're like, dude, what are you doing listening to these billionaires and built billion-dollar companies? And you gave me this like like very stern talking to about it. I'm like, what do you mean? And after, of course, reading your book, I've gotten more insight on that. But talk about that. And first, you talk a lot about borrowing other people's filter,
Yeah.
right? But then also, like, for someone at the level I'm at, 7-figure business, not multiple, 8 figures yet, um, not listening to billionaires, which seems to be a very popular trend nowadays. Talk about that a little bit.
It's interesting. And I always tell people, if you're going to pick a coach or a mentor, somebody to listen to, you need to find somebody who has been, we'll call it in the shit, if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast here.
Bring it on, man.
Somebody who's been
Just
in
be
the
you.
mess. They've been out there doing what you're doing. They're 10 or 20 steps ahead of you. So if they come and you say, hey, Connor, look, I know you're doing this, but I swear to you, I just did that and it failed, or I just did that and that succeeded. That's a person you need to listen to. And I use a couple examples, but I'll give you one. The one I think I used with you was Elon Musk and driving back and forth to California and building tunnels as opposed to trying to figure out routes. But you got to make sure the person you're talking to can relate to you and what you're going through. And people that are billionaires just don't. They're so far ahead of us. Their thinking is so far beyond us that what they're going to tell you probably doesn't relate. I'll give you an example. I tell people all the time, if you're an entrepreneur in this, what I call $1 to $10 million revenue scheme, you need to understand the numbers in your business, because if you don't understand the numbers in your business, you don't know what's going on. You have no idea what's going on in your everyday world, and you don't know how to make decisions. And yet I just listened to an interview with Richard Branson, who's a multi-billionaire. And he goes, I don't worry about numbers. I don't really care. Don't worry about your numbers. Let somebody else worry about that.
I heard that.
Well, he's a billionaire. Okay. When I'm a billionaire, I won't worry about it either.
And then I gave myself permission too out of it. I'm like, you know what? Screw my numbers. I'll just do like what Richard does, right?
Yeah, well, that ain't going to work for us at our level. I'm just telling you, it won't. So that's a bad piece of advice to take from a guy who's got 100 accountants working for him, and they will take care of it. We don't have that benefit of having all those people. So that's a good example of you need to talk to and take advice from people who are 10, 20 steps ahead of you, not billions of steps ahead of you.
Yeah, what is that in entrepreneurs? Like, we're overly optimistic, and we, like the study of people who represent themselves, or most of them are probably fake billionaires or legitimate. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. But why are we so drawn to that versus, something you've talked about quite a bit is like, being honest with your situation, looking at the hard facts and numbers. Like, you've coached a lot of entrepreneurs. Why are we terrible at just being realistic with our shit? See, I covered for you with the cuss word.
Everybody buys into this fake it till you make it, pretend like you're something before you are. They all buy into that, and they run around town pretending like they're something they're not. The problem is, if you're not honest with yourself about who you are, where you are, what your skill sets are, what you're good at, and more importantly, what you're not good at, if you can't be honest with yourself, there's no way you're going to get better. If I sit here and tell myself all day, I am the best accountant you've ever met in your life, the reality is I'm terrible as an accountant. My company would bankrupt if I was doing the accounting. So if I'm lying to myself, how am I ever going to get better at what I'm supposed to do? So too many people buy into that mantra of fake it till you make it, pretend like you're something you're not, and tell that's baloney. You need to understand who you are and who you're not. That way you can backfill your weaknesses with people who are strong and let yourself focus on what you're good at. So I've never bought into that people that confuse revenue with profits. I think that's where you were going with your earlier comment.
Well, yeah, people, they call themselves millionaires and their business does $1.1 million, and all of a sudden they're out, and then they're teaching others how to, like, I made a post the other day. There's these entrepreneurs, they made 6 figures one time, and then now they're a coach that helps other entrepreneurs make 6 figures. Like, it's very frustrating. And do you think it's more of like a recent of our time, the Instagram era? Like, there's just so much noise out there, and people so much more have the ability to really just be a fugazi, be fake about everything.
This is the other thing I tell people. In fact, I shot a video. It's on my website. I said, listen, hiring a coach or a mentor to help you is one of the most important things you can do as a young entrepreneur. And when I say young, I don't mean by age. I mean, you're in that well-funded startup to $10 million revenue range. Hiring a coach and a mentor is one of the most important things you can do. However, the most important thing you can do is vet that person and make sure they are who they are and they've done what they say they've done. I jokingly say I could go online right now and for $49 be certified as a master business coach. That doesn't mean I know anything, right? I can only teach you what I know. And if I've never done it, I've never been in the shit, if I've never been out there building it and losing and winning and failing and learning, if I've never done that, how can I teach you that? So be very, very careful who you allow to be your coach or mentor, because the wrong person can screw you up because they don't know what they're talking about.
So how do you do that vetting? Like, what do you recommend? Even someone at your level, you have coaches now?
I do. I belong to two masterminds.
Yeah.
So, and they're different. And I've had two more before that, and I do them for specific reasons. I had a podcast mastermind or a podcast coach when I launched. I had a speaking coach when I launched. And now I've got an executive coach that works with me, and I belong to another mastermind group that's kind of a collection of people. I call it a community mastermind. And I've worked with Brandon a little bit, and that's how I met you. I was working with Brandon down in Florida. So, I work with coaches. I got to tell you, and I usually say this in most of my podcasts, you know who Tim Cook is, right? Tim Cook's the CEO of Apple, one of the largest, most profitable companies in the world. Tim Cook has a coach paid for by his board of directors. So if the guy running the most profitable company in the world has a business coach, what makes you think as a young entrepreneur that you don't need one? And you just got to let that sink in.
My biggest regret now at 29, and I've gotten so much heavier. Last year, I think I've spent upwards of $45K plus on coaching, mentors, masterminds, and I'm kicking myself of like, damn, I should have done this at 22, versus 29. But at those beginning stages, when you're just really scraping by, trying to figure it out, you're a startup entrepreneur, you're watching TikTok videos from fake billionaires and like they're giving you bad advice. And then you maybe find someone legitimate to invest in as a coach. I don't have the money for it, right? Like, how do you navigate that? I agree with you. Every entrepreneur at any level needs a coach, but what would you say to those who say, I don't have the money to do it, but I'm going to go start this business anyways?
You'd be surprised how many people out there would help you without charging you. This coaching industry is an industry of generating, profits for the coach. That's what it is. But before I was doing that, I help people all the time. I've mentored people for the last 15 years that never paid me a dime. We had other things we did and we were friends and whatever. But, if you're very young and new in business, you don't necessarily have to find a $50,000 coach. Just find somebody out there who's done what you've done and say, hey, man, I have people call me, probably once a month. Hey, I was in one of your restaurants or I read one of your books. Would you mind sitting down with me for a couple of hours? I have one that I'm working with right now. It's actually a young lady that runs a tanning salon. And she called me and she said, I read your book. I want to open my own tanning salon. Would you sit down with me for an hour and talk to me? I didn't say, no, give me $500. I said, sure. Let's sit down. We'll get a cup of coffee at Starbucks and we'll chat about it. So, there's people out there that will help you if you've got no money. Trust me, you just got to get out there and find them.
Yeah, you gotta go out and make those connections and build those relationships and go to the random bar that one of your former coaches invites you to and meet guys like Brian and be like, oh, he does exist out in the world. So
go to networking events. Those are cheap. You'll find people that can help you.
Yeah. One of the things that really stood out, actually, let's do this because I realized we dove in. We never really took a step back into this arena, is go a little bit further into depth. Please brag about yourself. Like, there's no reason not to. Talk about kind of the stages just very quickly. People can go read your book, but just the stages of what you've accomplished in business, financially, each of the companies, and then what it is you're really more focused on now. And then I want to tie that into some other stuff here.
Yeah. So the quick story is, I failed out of high school at 16, managed to get back in and graduate, 1.2 GPA, barely got out, got kicked out of the house, joined the military, did 2 branches of the service, Army and Air Force, got off active duty, couldn't hold a job. So I started my first business. My first business was landscaping. We built it up into 7 franchises. That business did really well until it didn't, and it collapsed, and I lost everything. I was 29 years old, about the age you are right now. Learned a lot of lessons in that first collapse. Started another business in the insurance industry. This was the beginning of the dot-com era. We built the first direct-to-consumer call center. So we ended up selling that to a venture capital firm in 1999, I believe. That company went public, went back private. So built another online insurance agency. That company,
and that one you kind of made your money back on it, if I remember, or that wasn't like a wild exit. Like
that was
you
not.
were
I made $1
rolling in the
million
dough.
on that deal.
Yeah.
That was 2000. That was 1999. I made $1 million on that deal, and that's when you learn, quite frankly, that $1 million really isn't that much money.
Yeah.
And I tell people this all the time. Look, I went and I paid my house off. I bought a couple cars and paid them off. Paid off my credit cards and a little debt, and I had like $50,000 to $100,000 left.
Yeah.
So I'm a millionaire, but I got $50,000 to $100,000, and I got to go get a job. $1 million is not that much money.
Would you have done that differently instead of paying off your house, buying the car? Like, would you have?
Nope. And here's why.
Yeah.
And you're too young to understand this, but in 1999, when I sold and I got that $1 million, and I went down to the bank and told the banker I was going to pay my house off, he said, no, you need to invest your money. These internet stocks are cranking. Well, that was January of 2000, and in March of 2000 when the internet bubble burst. If I had not done that, I'd have lost all my money in that internet bubble collapse. But instead, 3 months later, I had a house paid for, 2 cars paid for, no debt. I called it my McDonald's lifestyle. I could work at McDonald's and keep my house and my cars and my lifestyle. So that's a big one I teach people all the time, is build your foundations and then stack them from there. But
was that was just following your gut instinct on the situation?
Actually, when I was in my landscaping days, this is the company before that collapsed. I used to do landscaping for one of the Atlanta Braves, who had just moved into Atlanta from St. Louis. Very famous guy. You'd know him if I told you. And I remember talking to him one day out at his house, and I said, what do you do for investments? And he goes, I don't invest my money. He goes, this is why professional athletes all go broke. He goes, every dime I make is sitting in T-bills. My house is paid for. My cars are paid for. I know that if my career ends tomorrow, I still have all my money. It's sitting over there. It's earning 4%. I can live the rest of my life on that. I'm safe. And I was like, wow, this is a guy making millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. And so when I sold that company, it came right back to me. I said, you know what? I'm going to do what Terry did. And I'm just going to pay my house off, my cars off, and I know that I'm safe and I can't be touched. And I've maintained that throughout my whole life, everything I've ever done. So after that, I built the next insurance company. We sold it to a company called another venture capital group called getinsured.com. If you buy health insurance in 10 or 12 states, you're buying it on their platform. Started an internet company. We sold to a private equity group. Ours was called Monetize It. We sold it to a company called MediaWiz. That was an $80 million exit. After that, I went into consulting, started doing consulting for Fortune 500 companies, public and private, in sales management. Bought some restaurants, started another company. We sold to an Indian company, didn't make any money on that one. Wrote some books, got into politics. I sit on city council today. I've got 2 Wall Street Journal best-selling books. So, and then there's today. Today, I run an executive coaching and mastermind group, working with entrepreneurs in that well-funded startup through 10 million revenue. I do sales training and coaching still. So that's kind of what I do today.
Are you investing into companies as well now, or more so just keeping cash on the sidelines if something comes up, but just continuing to acquire income?
I'm heavy in real estate. I own a lot of rental properties, commercial and residential. Real estate's an amazing investment from the tax-free qualities of what you can do. And, I use this example. If you buy a piece of property right and you're renting it right, if your rent goes up 5% and your equity goes up 5%, and you take all your cash out of your properties and you reinvest them in new properties, you'll double the value of your portfolio every 7 years. So if you have $1 million, it'll be 2 million. If you have 5 million, it'll be 10 million. And that's just the way real estate works. All your income's tax-free. Real estate's an amazing vehicle.
And you're doing rent, like single family homes or multifamily, or just
so I have
19
single family homes right now. Well, actually I have 12 single family and 7 what we call commercial residential condos we rent to businesses. We're going to sell the restaurant company here soon. And after that, I'm going to move into the multifamily because everybody's telling me I need to be in the apartment business. So we'll figure that out here in another year and a half or so.
Yeah. Careful who's telling you that with some of those guys we were talking about earlier, the billionaires that are billionaires. No, you know better than I do. Talk about that too. Actually, I want to touch on that after this. And I think this story was related to MediaWiz, but you launched this company with a partner you add an investor, you're like 400 grand in the hole.
Yep.
And your partner's like basically a do or die moment with you that you had to make
Yeah.
in an instant,
Changed
walk
my life.
away
Yep.
or stick with it. And it did change your life. But here's where I'm going with this question is, and I'm sure you get approached by these entrepreneurs as well. And I think Shark Tank has contributed negatively to this, is I just get a lot of investment, and then once I get, I raise funds, once I get to a certain point when my business is big enough, then I'll be profitable. Versus, I've been, from some other entrepreneurs, and I've gotten this from like Adam Coffey's model, for example, is creating that perfect 100K and then replicating and scaling from there. If you can't be profitable at your first 100K, you got to completely rethink the business model. So what's your perspective on that and your thoughts for entrepreneurs are like, well, this business isn't profitable. Once I get to that $10 million mark, then we start making money. You know what I mean?
So this is the dirty little secret in venture capital and angel investing. Okay. These venture capitalists aren't building companies. They're building businesses that they can sell to the next level of investor. They don't care if it's profitable. All they want to do is invest money, build revenue, create a story, flip it to the B round, create a story, flip it to the C round, create a story, and make it go public. And if you go back and look at all the companies that go public and how many of them are still in business, you'd be shocked. When I sold my second company, Venture Capital, I was out in Sand Hill Road out in Silicon Valley, and I went into this giant boardroom, and they've got a whole wall of plaques. I'll never forget this. And I went down these 30 plaques on the wall, and more than half of those companies that they had invested and exited were out of business. Because it's just a game. It's a game. It's a game of money. The problem with that is you take all these entrepreneurs that are building businesses and they think they want to duplicate the game, right? They think, well, if I do it like venture capital guys do, then I'm going to be successful like they are. You're not. Those guys have billions to play with that you don't. They're experts at building up reputations and reselling stuff eventually to the public. They get their money and they leave. Those businesses have to keep reinvesting more and more and more and more millions. So unless you've got 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 million to invest, that model's not going to work for you. You actually need to build a business out of value. I'll never forget, in that particular company, we were blowing about $1 million a month in our burn rate, right? And they had bought me out, and then we were burning about $1 million a month because they wanted to grow. And at one point we were down to like $5 million. And I said, guys, we're out of business in 5 months. And our CEO, the guy that had bought me out, he goes, don't worry about it. They got another 6 to 10 million they'll throw in. It's not that big a deal. And I was freaking out. I'm like, no, we need to actually build a company. And I literally went to the next board meeting and I said, guys, if you will let me, I will build this company profitably instead of just blowing $1 million a month doing crazy stuff that's not working. And I remember the VC guy's name was David Cowan. He's one of the big guys in Silicon Valley. He goes, Brian, we don't want a profitable business. We have no interest in that. We want $1 billion exit. That's the only thing we care about. So if we invest money in 10 companies, 1 will get a huge exit, 1 will break even, and 8 will lose money. And that's the way the deal works. So we're just going to keep piling money on this thing to see if we can hit a home run. I didn't understand that at the time. I was like, that's just a foreign concept to me because I was a guy that had built companies my whole life. So if you're a young entrepreneur, don't get wrapped up in how Silicon Valley does it or angel investors do it. You need to build something profitable, unless you've got $50 million to throw at it and then knock yourself out.
Was MediaWiz that company that your partner?
No.
Okay, well,
that was a company. My partner, we had the do or die moment. Yes,
yeah,
100%.
Was MediaWiz.
In his
but
case,
he had already been successful, and he had already
built a company. Yep, and he'd already made. He's probably worth $20 million at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his money we were investing. I mean, he put all the money in personally. And then when he came to me and said, but I still owed it back because I was a creditor to him essentially.
Mm.
And then when he came in and said, you need to put more, we were going to put more money in. And I was like, no, we haven't made any money. This is back to me. No, I don't want to invest more money. I don't want to put any more money. No. And he kept saying, Brian, it's going to work. I've done this before. I know what I'm talking about. I promise you it's going to work. And I'm freaking out. And then at some point he said, here's the deal. I'll let you walk away. You owe me nothing. You just give me my equity back. And I just stared at him for like 2 minutes thinking, I can walk away and get out of this $500,000 of debt, but I'm also staring at a guy who's worth 20 million and I'm worth 20 bucks. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm in. If I'm going down, I'm going down with you. I guess I gave up mentally, quit listening. I did a podcast with Jason Duncan, quit listening to my own damn advice. Because clearly if my advice was good, I'd be worth more than 20 bucks. And he was worth 20 million. So I'm just going to listen to this guy, do whatever he tells me, and just, that's the deal. And then
In that scenario, borrowed his filter, which I haven't heard anyone frame it like that. I love that perspective. I've been thinking in terms of that a lot more, just even in like major challenges in the business. I mean, you have my one of my coaches says you have 54 good days in a year, you could be a millionaire, but most days are not freaking easy in business.
But Connor, the only difference between you and Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos is the way you think. And the way you think is a product of that filter. It's how your brain accepts and rejects information, and whether it utilizes that information for you to be successful or not. They accept and reject information at a whole different level than you. So you've just got to train your brain to think more like these types of people. But don't go from where you are to the billionaire like we started this podcast. Find somebody 10 steps ahead of you. Be like them. In my case with Steve, I said, fine, you make the decisions. I'm going to listen to you. I'll do exactly what you say. And 2 years later, we sold it for $80 million. Can you imagine if I'd said...
And this is why you give dumb kids like me hope.
Sometimes, but you know what that requires? I got to be honest with you. It requires you being able to check your ego. And it requires you being able to make a conscious decision that no, you don't know what you're doing. And yes, you do need to listen. And that is very hard for A-type driver red personality people. Because we all want to think we have all the answers and we all want to think that we can answer all the questions. And the reality is we should be asking the questions, not answering them.
More times than I care to admit. After this exit went well for you, was that when the agency, your next exit had happened?
Yep. Then we sold the one that went to the Get Insured, and they'll probably go public here shortly. Yeah. And that's when I moved into consulting and started the other company that we sold for nothing. Basically, we got it off the ground but couldn't make it fly. You know, smart as you think you are, not everything works.
But on this one, there's a scenario where you're sitting down with your team, you just gone through this exit, and you know, I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but in essence, like, we made a profit, we walked away, and then you're looking at what the VC or the fund had done with it after they acquired it, and then it's worth like another 20 mil. You're like, well, damn, if only, you know. So
the story is
having the regret of taking a profit when you can take the profit, take a win and then move on to the next thing.
The story is we were at 32 million revenue. We sold it for 80.
Yeah.
The next year we did 60 million revenue, and we were all like, oh man.
Could have gotten.
Now we had made the decision when we sold that we were going to be happy with what we got. So we had to remind ourselves that a few times. But the end of that story is they went from 30 to 60. The next year it dropped to 10. So we caught it on the upswing. If we'd have waited 6 more months, we'd have got more. But if we'd have waited 12 more months, we could have got nothing. So be happy with what you got.
Well, and so on that, you say sell, in terms of like sell or don't sell, future profits versus the risk. And so what is that scenario where there's maybe like not a risk and you just continue to hold, cash flow the business, maybe move on to another venture? Like, how do you really accurately determine that?
It's a crapshoot. I took equity, or I took stock in that part of that 80 million. We had $20 million worth of stock, right? And I held that stock. The company before that, when I sold, I had stock in it. Well, I sold the stock in the company before that and made money. I held the stock in the 80 million exit, and that company went to a zero. So I don't know. You got to make a decision and be happy with whatever it is you do. We made the decision to be happy with the cash, and we took a risk on the stock on the back end. And one time we won and one time we lost. I'm the guy that builds something to a point, and then if somebody offers me enough money, I'll sell it. Much like my restaurant chain right now, I'll probably sell it in 1.5 to 2 years. It's booming right now. It does really well. It's got a good multiple exit. I'll sell it. And who knows, somebody might buy it and turn it into a national chain. And I'll be sitting down in Florida going, well, I sold it when I had 6 locations and now there's 6,000, but oh well. I'm
Damn, I
good.
should have held, but that almost goes back to the ego though, right? Is getting those wins that keep you fueled to move on to your, to live and invest and build another day.
Do it again.
Now Elon Musk, again, like he'll invest go completely all in,
All
go
in.
for broke. Like that's a
Yeah.
totally different animal.
Yeah. I don't recommend that to anybody, although it's worked well for him.
You want to go burrow some tunnels under the ground. I hate driving from Tampa
We're
to
actually
St.
bringing the boring
Peter's.
company to my town of Alpharetta. They're going to do a tunnel for us under one of our roads here.
Wild.
I was just out at SpaceX and got to do that whole thing. And then we met the guy that runs the boring company and convinced
Yeah,
him.
when are you going in space? You're signed up
So
for
I'm
it,
going
aren't
up
you?
with Space Perspective, which is
Uh-huh.
it's actually a space balloon, if you can believe that.
Mhm.
It takes 2 hours to go up to 100,000 feet, and it's 2 hours at altitude and 2 hours down to splash down in the ocean. And I think I'm scheduled for 2025.
Amazing. That'll
It'll
be
be
here
fun.
before I know it. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. For
Jealous.
100,000 versus 400,000 for 6 minutes.
100,000. It was 100,000.
100,000 for this versus if you go on Bezos or Virgin Galactic, it's like 400 grand to do those, and you're 6 minutes in and you're done.
In reality, it's not as crazy as I kind of thought it would be.
Yeah.
So in winding down here, anything else, 30, 60 seconds, you want to just put a cap on some of the things? We got to do another podcast. I mean, there's so much more we can dive into here, but, anything else that is top of mind you want to share before we wrap up?
So I'll give you my 5 keys as we wrap up. These are the 5 keys to success. I did an article for Forbes and we did the 5 keys to success, which by the way are the same 5 keys to failure, right? So if you're launching a business or if you have a business that's not growing and scaling at the level that you want it to, here's the things you need to know. Number 1, you need to decide why you're doing this. Why do you want to start this business? Why do you want to grow it? Because if you're going to grow or scale a business, there are going to be a lot of hurdles that are going to come after you, and you have to be willing to go through the crap that's going to be necessary or learn the lessons you need to learn in order for you to get to where you want to go. So the first question is, why are you doing this? And that why has to be strong. The second question is, who are you in the business? This is the 4 personalities I talk about. Or more importantly, who are you not? Entrepreneurs are not necessarily CEOs. I know people who start businesses that are terrible CEOs, but their ego won't let them drop that CEO title so that they can succeed and grow, right? So who are you, but who are you not? 4 personalities, right? There's an entrepreneur, a salesperson, a manager, and a technician. Figure out who you are. It's an honest discussion with yourself. The third one is, why should anybody buy your product? And why should they buy it from you, right? If you do not have a unique product offering that drives people to you and your product, if they can get it anywhere, you're never going to scale your business. If you're selling the same thing they can buy 10 minutes up the road and 10 minutes up the road after that, then you better have a unique offering that people are going to want to come and buy it. And they're going to want to buy it from you, right? So you got to find out why should they buy and why should they buy from you. The next one is, you need to understand that if you aren't growing the way you want to grow, or if you're just launching and you've never done this successfully before, you don't know what you're doing. You got to check your ego and understand you don't know what you're doing. And the number one thing you need to do is get a business coach. Get a coach or a mentor, somebody that can come in 10, 20 steps ahead of you that can help you avoid the pitfalls, what I call the 100 lessons you need to learn from where you are to success. And they can just say no, 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 yes, 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 and help you accelerate and amplify your business. And the last one, you need to learn your numbers. You'd be surprised or shocked how many people don't understand the numbers in their business. You don't need to be an accountant, but you need to be able to break your business down into the 5 or 6 core metrics. And those 5 or 6 core metrics need to be monitored weekly. And they will tell you everything you need to know about your business, whether it's going to succeed or fail in the future. So those are my 5 steps to success, or 5 keys to failure, depending on whether you do them or not.
And again, just goes to show, I have a lot of authors reach out to me on this podcast, write a ton of books, but of all the ones I've read, especially in the last, 6 months, few years, is like, you are not fluffy in the information that you're sharing. I mean, you just tell it like it is. I loved your book. It's very realistic. And there's not enough of that out there in the media and books that are, especially something as small as like freaking know your numbers. I mean,
so most of these books, masterminds, coaches, are what I call they're relationship and community based.
Yeah.
I call it fluffy. You use that term. I am tactical.
Yes.
We are extremely tactical in what we do. So if you're going to come to me and use me as a coach, I'm not going to be delving into your personality and what's going on in you. No, we're going to look at your business, your numbers, be very tactical, make decisions you can implement today that will change your business and make you more profitable. I like to say I can make you better. You just have to listen.
And I can appreciate that. I love tactical too. I find a lot of other kind of startup, they just seek inspiration,
Yep.
but tactics outweighs inspiration any given day. Like if you need inspiration to be an entrepreneur, you probably should not be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And so thank you for that. Thank you for putting out such great information, being visible, being available. You could be retired on a beach anywhere in the world that you probably want right now, but you are here doing this podcast. So thank you for your time. And in exchange, you never know who's listening. Is there any specific either resources, connections, relationships, vendors, you name it, that the listeners could maybe connect you up with?
Well, anybody who wants to get a hold of me or any of my information, you can go to, I think my website is actually on your screen there. It's www.brianwillmedia.com. My podcasts, my books, my mastermind, my coaching programs. We have our first live event coming up in July where we're going to do a masterclass in sales based on the book I just released, which is No, The Psychology of Sales and Negotiation. And then I am available for speaking, podcasts, anywhere we can make a difference and help people. That's what I'm looking to do. So, anybody that wants to talk to me, go to the website, leave me a DM.
Super grateful for you, brother. Thanks. And you can tell that if listening, you can tell Brian's not a millennial because he did add www before the domain name. So now there is the wise man.
People do make fun of me.
I just got to give you a hard time. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. And again, for all of you listening, make sure go connect, go check out the site, follow on. So you're pretty active on Instagram, all the social medias and everything. You've got your own show as well. On all the podcast apps. So make sure you check that out. Much love to you, my friends. Make it great. And we will see you